Hi students, today we are discussing the second unit, a second part of discussion of creational design patterns. Let us see the introduction of discussion of creational design patterns. In this concept, what is creational design pattern in the sense how we can create object mechanism and initialization. In this creational design pattern, we need to study five design patterns coming under the concept of creational design patterns. We need to study five design patterns. Okay, the first one is nothing but abstract a factory method design pattern, and the second one is a builder. Okay, a third one is a factory a method, a fourth one is a prototype, a fifth one is a singleton. Okay, these are the creational design patterns. We are these are coming under the concept of creational design pattern. Let us see what is a creational design pattern and what are the benefits of creational pattern, where we can use the where we can use the creational design pattern. Okay, in this concept of creational design pattern, the creational design pattern abstracts the instantiation process. Okay, what here it abstracts the instantiation process. What does the meaning of the it abstracts the instantiation process in the sense, they help make a system independent. They help make a system independent of how its objects are created, how the objects are created, composed and represented. What I meant to say here in the sense, a class is an instance of an object. Here a class creational design pattern uses inheritance to vary the class that instantiated. What is the meaning of the inheritance? A class which has acquired the properties of sub parent class to the a child class. Like this, a class creational design pattern uses inheritance to vary the class that's instantiated. Okay, whereas an object, coming to the object creational design pattern, it will delegate instantiation to another object. Listen carefully what I am saying here. Here we are using a class creational design pattern. We need to use inheritance to vary the class. That's how the class will be instantiated. Whereas and coming to the object creational design pattern, it will delegate instantiation to another object. It will delegate instantiation to another object. Okay, listen carefully. Here we are studying the creational design pattern. It becomes very important as a systems, how to evolve, how to depend more on object compositions. How we want to evolve, how we can depend more on object composition than class inheritance. Okay, what that happened there in the sense, it emphasizes it shifts away from the hard coding and fixed set of behaviors in the direction of how we can defining a smaller some set of fundamental behavior design pattern structures, how that can be composed into any number of more complex ones. So we are studying here the creating objects, how we want to creating objects with particular behaviors. It requires more than simply instantiating a class. What here it requires simply instantiating a class. Here we need to study how to encapsulating the knowledge about which a concrete classes the system uses. Okay, here what the system uses, the concrete classes, how we want to implementation for all the methods. Okay, how we can encapsulating the knowledge about which we are supposed to do, take a concrete class, what does the system uses, what the system, the purpose here. Now, in this concept of creational design pattern, we need to study there are two recurring themes. There are two recurring themes in this pattern. First one, encapsulate knowledge about which concrete classes the system uses. Listen carefully. Okay, and the second point is how they hide how instances of these classes are created and put together. Listen carefully. Second one, they hide the information how instantiate of these particular classes are created and put together. In the sense, all these systems at all these systems we are using about the objects in their interfaces, whatever they need to define the abstract classes. So consequently, we need to say the creational design patterns gives you a lot of flexibility, ma. It gives you a lot of flexibility. So in what if you have to get created, what gets created, who creates it, how it gets created. Listen carefully what I am saying. In this concept of a creational design pattern, it gives a lot of flexibility. It should be flexible, ma, to us. And what gets we need to create it, and who creates it, how it gets to be created, and when it will be also created. We have to learn about what, who, how, when it will be, how it will be created, an object initialization and object mechanism, how we want to create an objects there. So let you configure a system with a product objects. So let you configure a system with a product objects that vary widely in the structure, objects that vary widely in structure. Listen carefully. Objects in class we need some, it's a class is an instance of a object. Objects that vary widely in the sense very hugely in structure concept and the functionality concept. The configuration here, it will be a static, ma. Static in the sense that is specified at compile time only, ma. That is specified at compile time. Or coming to the dynamic time at runtime, especially we are calculate. Okay, dynamic, the configuration can be static, that is specified at compile time. The configuration can be dynamic at runtime only, it should be specified. Okay, ma. This is the concept of a creational design pattern. Now we need to study the important, how already I say these also, how how it is important if a system evolve to depend more on object composition than on class inheritance. Already I said these points now itself only. Okay, now we see what are creational design patterns, what are creational design patterns. Let us see now. Let us start. Design patterns that deals with object creation mechanism, trying to create objects in a manner suitable to the situation, is exactly what I meant to say. Creational design patterns are used to create objects, okay, or used to create object. In the sense, design patterns that deals with object creation a mechanism in the sense it's a process how we are trying to create objects in a particular manner or a sequence manner. It is very appropriate to the situation. Okay, and coming to the next point, it make a system independent of the way in which objects are created, composed and represented. It's a very a key point, essential point, how to make a system independent of the way in which we are supposed to do, how the objects are created, composed and represented. Sometimes a creational design patterns or a competitors ma, or a competitors. For example, I can say, listen carefully, there are some cases when either a prototype design pattern or abstract factor design pattern, it can be used profitably. So at some other times they are complementary. How the builder can use one of the other patterns to how to implement which components we need to get built. Okay, and coming to the prototype can use a singleton in its implementation here. Because the creational design patterns are closely related, we will study all of five of them together to highlight their similarities and differences. We also use a common example here. Okay, we also use a common example later in next class. We discuss the common example for the abstract factory method and factory method, builder, prototype, a singleton. Okay, these design patterns we need to study about the examples in a clear cut way. Okay, now we are studying here. There are two recurring themes. Already I said to you, it's simply two themes. What themes? Two recurring themes in these patterns. First, they all encapsulate a knowledge about which concrete classes the system uses, so we can change them easily. Okay, later. Next, the second one, what we can say, they are second, how the instances of these classes are created, and put together. Okay, in the sense, all these systems about the objects in their interfaces as defined by the abstract class. Okay, in the abstract class we need to represent the all objects in the structure itself. Okay, and coming to the what are the benefits of a creational design pattern? Benefits in the sense, what are the advantages, what are the applications we need to use there? Okay, creational design patterns let you program to an interface defined by an abstract class. Okay, by an abstract class let you program an interface, how we can define it by an abstract class. Let you configure a system with a product objects, ma'am. Let you configure a system with the product objects that carry a that vary very huge in a structure and a functionality. Here some of the examples of graphical user interface systems. The first one is interview, how the graphical user interface, the standard class library. Okay, and coming to the second one is multiple look and feel standards, how the lexi should be adapted, such as the multiple look and feel standards. Okay, the or you seen presentation manager and motif class. Okay, this is one of the example of a GUI systems. And coming to the third one, that is nothing but abstract factories. We need to take we need to support to take abstract factories, how to create classes. Okay, how to create classes and related to particular product objects, without instantiating their classes directly for different screen components, whatever you need to choose there. And the next slide, benefits of creational pattern continuation, amma. This is a generic instantiation, how the objects are instantiated without having generic, without having to identify a specific class type. We need to identify a specific class type without having their objects are instantiated to identify a specific class type in client side code, like abstract factory and factory method a design pattern. Coming to the simplicity, yes, it should very we are creating objects with particular behaviors. It requires more than a simply instantiating a class there. How to make instantiation easier in the sense, callers do not have to write long complex code. Yes, exactly, you don't want to write a long complex code for a for a program. Let us take one program to instantiated purpose, and we need to set up an object like builder and prototype pattern. You need to use that. We need to make instantiation easier. Okay, and coming to the creation constraints. Creation, how we want to create objects, constraints in the sense conditions. Based upon the conditions, the creational design patterns can put a bound on who can create objects, how they are created objects, and when they are created objects. These are some conditions, creation constraints. Creational patterns can put bound on who can create objects, how they are created objects, and when they are created objects. Okay, this is the discussion of creational design pattern. In the next class, we seen the first creational design pattern, that is nothing but abstract factory a design pattern. Up to now, thank you, ma. If you have any doubts regarding the topic of discussion of creational design patterns, can you please contact me?